Hey there! In this tutorial, I'm walking you through how to make the Lunara Crossbody Bag. It's a sleek and modern design with a few fun challenges along the way. It's not exactly beginner friendly, but don't worry, we'll tackle it step by step and you might just surprise yourself and learn something, right? So just grab your stuff and get your materials ready and get going. We're gonna make this now, but first we're gonna see at all the details looking at this bag together. So here you can see the Lunara. This one I have made from waterproof canvas with faux leather and webbing. And let's talk about the front. The front has two pleats at the bottom right here. It does have a smaller front zipper pocket and it fits my whole hand, so it should be enough room for your cell phone in there. And there's a bigger front pocket that goes along the whole front panel and it goes until here. The hardest part about this bag is the shaped curved zipper, and the other thing is the webbing is flat like this, but you could also insert this another way. This is the back panel, is pretty plain, and on the inside you can see I stuffed it with some fabric. We do have an interior zipper pocket, of course, because we do need this to turn the bag right side out, and of course we need this for our stuff. See, you can make either with a zipper overlay or without. There you see the two different choices, and if you chose to make something from a fluffy fabric like corduroy, see, I skipped the top stitch from the bottom top stitch right here that goes over the zipper to cover the zipper up, but the second one, it should be done because otherwise the front pocket will stretch when you pack it with heavy stuff. So if you have like corduroy like I do, I would skip the bottom top stitching, but I will get to that later as well. Here's the other view of it. You see I have slightly curves here, so in some fabrics and some materials it's not really preventable to have a few bumps there, but depending on your fabrics and your sewing skills as well, we can try to minimize them. Before we cut our fabrics, we need to print out the pattern pieces. So make sure you print them out from your desktop, not from the download folder. Open it in Adobe Reader and choose the printing settings. It's important to have the right format. If it's DIN A4 or US letter, make sure to download and choose the right format and change the size to actual size or 100%. And then print and check the boxes, the measurements, if they are correct. Here are my parts being printed out, and this is all that we're gonna need. I did not interface them with any Deco-Fill-Lite. This is the B piece. You see there's a gap on the bottom there. It's for the cover, for the zipper. We do need some tabs for our zippers, and here you can see the D piece, the top. This is the C piece, and before you start you need to choose if you want to make a zipper overlay or not. In this video I will show you how both versions are sewn. So you need to decide before you cut your fabrics if you want to have a zipper overlay or not. This is an asymmetrical design, so we need to cut this on the wrong side of the fabrics. You draw on the wrong side of the fabrics. If you do a zipper lay, do not cut any holes into the interfacing, just if you do without zipper overlay. I did not have Palon Thermolon with the fusible version, so I decided to test out some double-sided tape to attach my fleece on there. You could also use some spray glue if you want to iron it on. I didn't want to try I did want to try other options as well. So when preparing your fabrics, I do not choose any Deco-Fill-Lite or anything that will make the bag stiff, because it's supposed to have like a slouchy look and a soft feel, and it should not be stiff. But of course you can experiment as much as you want with your preferred interfacings. I've just chosen the volume fleece to give it some volume, and be aware that on the bottom of the C-piece you will have to make some pleats, so it's gonna be hard if you have attached anything that will make the piece stiff. So you see, you cut out the rectangle if you want the zipper overlay or not. So that is why you have to choose before you prepare and before you start with your project. Here on this project I want to do a zipper overlay, so I will cut out the dotted lines on your pattern pieces. It's the dotted lines for the zipper overlay, or the red one for the without zipper overlay. And like I said, if you don't do a zipper overlay, you just cut the hole into the fleece, not into the fabric, okay? So I will transfer the rectangle from the pattern piece to my wrong side of my C piece, and then I will cut it out with the rotary cutter. If you do that as well, make sure not to cut too far. So for the corners, take some small scissors to cut this hole. But let's start with the front being more detailed. So I've cut this hole and I have my zipper overlay, and I place it centered above this hole and stitch the outline with a wide stitch. And I did not lock my stitch. I pull the thread towards the back and tie them together in a knot, because like that you would have a clean, nice finish without any thick seams from locking your stitches. But it's not a must. You can do that if you want to. You can just do a regular lock your stitch in a regular way. Let me excuse myself for not being as bubbly and like having a clear, nice voice as usually. I do have a really bad cold, and I waited a while to have to do this voiceover, and it's finally getting better. But I will try my best to make this voiceover as nice for you as possible. So when you stitch the outer line on the zipper overlay, you do trim the fabric and the volume fleece from the wrong side. Do not cut into the zipper overlay, just the fabric and the volume fleece like that. And now we will prepare our lining pieces for the zipper. See, the one piece is bigger and one piece is smaller. You place them up with the right side being up. And when cutting these fabrics, you always need to pay attention on how to cut them because of the wrong side and the right side, okay? Then you thread a zipper pull on an 8-inch long, 20 centimeter long zipper, and it closes towards the top like that. And you place it on the F piece, on the larger piece, both being right sides up, and stitch it with 7 millimeter, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then you fold the zipper away from the fabric and repeat this to the other edge of the other piece. I think it's a G piece, right? And then you sew this together with 7 millimeter as well. Then fold the fabrics away. So you see now the wrong sides being up, and you place this above, centered. So the zipper is right side up and the lining pieces are wrong side up, and then you place it on top over the gap, align it nicely, make sure that it's centered, and then you just take some clips to secure it, just like that. And then you will stitch a rectangle around the zipper through the like the inside stitching, you see, on the not on the outside of the zipper overlay. And you do not lock your stitch as well, and pull the thread to the back for this nice finish. And like that you have attached your zipper onto the C piece. See, like this, looks nice. And then you flip it over again and place the two lining pieces right sides together and sew them together with 1 centimeter seam allowance, 3 8-inch seam allowance. So I take some clips and then I flip it around and I sew from this side folding this C-piece out of the way and closing my zipper pocket like that. When that is done, you do need to trim off a little bit of your zipper tape or anything that is like extending over the seam allowance from the C-piece. So before we do the second zipper pocket on the front panel, let's make a version without a zipper overlay. So therefore, you see we've just cut out the hole from the fleece and not from the fabric. So we need to attach it to the back, to the wrong side of our C-piece. Therefore, we used the red dotted rectangle. Oh, that's a tongue break. Well, I attach it onto the wrong side of the C-piece, and then I will take the piece for the facing, and I will align it right sides together, centered above the gap. You could also use a pin and stick it through the center line and see if you did get the center quite correctly. I just feel the volume fleece, and then I can center it like nicely above the gap. And then I turn it around and I stitch this rectangle, stitching those two pieces together. And then I will cut the center line with the rotary cutter, but not all the way from start to finish. Just leave a little gap so you can cut two V-shapes into the corners. Don't hurt the seam, just cut as close to the corners as you can without cutting into the seam, and do this on both ends of the rectangle. And then you can stick the panel, the facing, I think it's the J piece. You can stick it through the hole and form out all the corners and everything, and press it flat so everything stays in place. And then basically it's the same thing that we did before. We take our F and G pieces right sides up and place a 20 centimeter long zipper tape with zipper pull attached, or 8-inch zipper, right side up on the edge right here, and sew this with 7mm seam allowance, 1/4 of an inch. Fold the fabric away from the zipper and place the other edge of the zipper tape onto the second piece in the same way, and sew this in the same way. Then you place the fabrics wrong sides up, zipper right side up in front of you. The fabrics are folded away from the zipper, and you align the C-piece, the gap in the C-piece right above the zipper tape, and then stitch a rectangle around it. Then you flip the piece over, put the lining pieces right sides together, and sew them together with 1 centimeter seam allowance. So this is the same thing as if you would do this with the zipper overlay, and then you will trim off any extra. But let's continue now with the second zipper pocket. So you would need a 33 centimeter long zipper tape that's 13 inches, and attach a zipper pull, and then put the tabs on the side of the zipper tape. Therefore, take a main and lining zipper tab for each side. Place the main tab right sides together with the zipper tape, the lining right side up underneath it, and sew this short end with 1 centimeter seam allowance, and repeat this on the other end of the zipper. Then fold the tabs away from the zipper and put them wrong sides together and stitch them together so everything will stay in place. Then mark the center of your zipper tape. So some zippers can be cut, some others cannot be, so make sure your zipper has the good quality that you can make snips in it. Otherwise, take a marker to make these markings. So the zipper closes towards the left. That's important because we want this to be we want to close our top and front pocket zipper in the same direction. And then you will mark the center of this edge from the C-piece and place the markings right sides together from zipper tape and C-piece and baste it together first. When you have basted the zipper right side down on the right side of the C-piece, take a lining piece for the front pocket, mark the center as well, and place it right side down on top, aligned by the top center as well, and then sew with 7mm seam allowance, 1/4 inch, but start here. So the whole zipper tape will be sewn on there, not just the lining piece, okay? Flip it over, fold the fabric away from the zipper, and then top stitch. Afterwards, you will take the second lining piece and attach it to the top edge of the zipper. Therefore, you flip the piece over, mark the center on the second lining piece as well, and then place it right side down centered. You can also align them on the sides, but this time align it to the top edge of the zipper and baste it together within seam allowance. You can see the top piece is a bit shorter than the bottom piece, and we also need to trim the corners. So first trim the extra fabric on the bottom piece, and then trim the corners on the lining pieces so nothing will get into our seam allowance later. And then stitch the two pieces, sew them together with 1cm seam allowance. So you might wonder, like, how do we do it, because we don't get up all the way. That doesn't matter, that's totally fine. But I start right here and then sew up as far as I can, and then I will continue from the point where I started and sew up again as far as I get without stitching into the C-piece. Perfect, that's done. So now we can attach the B piece that we have marked with the center. So we got the B piece right here, and we will mark our center, open the zipper, and place this aligned by the center on top. You could also check if this is correct by just folding it up like this slightly and checking if the length is perfect and maybe adjust it a little bit, and then you sew it with 7mm 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then you fold this down like where the border from the fleece is, just so far that the zipper is covered by the fabric from the B piece, and then you fold it like that and top stitch this border. If you have corduroy, like I said in the intro but you skipped it, see, this is what it looks like when this edge is top stitched. It's not nice, but if you skip the top stitching for certain types of fabrics, it's a nicer look. Just depends on your fabrics. On the waterproof canvas, I will top stitch this, and then you can fold it down and you see it lays flat nicely above your zipper. We do need to make a second top stitch, and this is important because when you put heavy stuff in your bag, it will pull down, so we don't want the front pocket to make like a curve. We want this to stay in place, so do not skip this top stitching. Therefore, I will take some masking tape because it's 1 inch wide, or 2 centimeters. It's a little bit less than 1 inch, and then I will place it on there, and then I will top stitch. It's easier to follow the stitch if you have a marking. You could also take a ruler to draw a line on your fabric, but I just like the masking tape. And then you top stitch here 2 centimeters, or a little bit less than 1 inch from the bottom of the cover. You pull this away, now you can see it's a nice top stitch, and everything will stay in place like that. See, this is 2 centimeters to the stitch line and maybe 1 inch into the border of it. It's a little bit less than 1 inch actually, but 1 inch is fine too. So now we will attach the D corner piece. So therefore this needs to be aligned centered. So there will be like two small corners sticking out on the sides. So therefore I will draw a line with my seam allowance on the wrong side of the D piece, which is 1 centimeter 3/8 inch, and then I will place it on my completed front piece and see if the length 1 centimeter from the edge from the bottom piece is matching up with the measurements. See, this is where the points meet, and this is where they should be. And then you will stitch it on and use the correct seam allowance and trim off the tab that's left. Put this up and top stitch on the D piece. You could also top stitch the flap on the other side, the cover of the zipper. If you have like a small corner standing over, just trim that off. That's totally fine. So now the front piece is done. No, it's not actually. We have to make the pleats. I'm sorry, I forgot. So you find your markings on the pattern pieces and you transfer them to your piece. So this is pleat 1. You take the center of the pleat will be in the center so that the other two markings will meet, okay? So you fold this wrong sides together and then fold the pleat away from the center. Repeat on the other side. The two dots on top of each other, the center of the pleat is in the center and will be folded away from the center. And then you will secure this with a few stitches. Now we're done, Sarah, right? Now we're done. The front is completed. And now we will take care of the interior pieces. So first we will repeat this for the interior front piece. This is the eye piece, and we will make the same pleats as we did before. The two dots on top of each other. The center of the flap is at the center of the pleat will be folded towards the side away from the center, and then top stitch everything securely in place. I don't know if it's this cold virus that I have right now that makes me switching up words. I am so sorry. I am trying my best not to be too confusing. Next we will make the interior for the back. So therefore we have the J zipper facing piece, and we will draw a rectangle on the wrong side of it. You could simply just cut this off and use this as a template, just like I did. But I made like wobbly lines, so I will take my ruler and correct that. And then I will place this facing right sides together with the A lining piece, and this should be centered and 3 centimeters from the top center. So therefore I will mark the center on top and bottom. And then I will place the facing right sides together with the lining piece 3 centimeters from the top edge. Down, make sure that it's straight, and then stitch the rectangle on the J piece. So you will stitch these two pieces together by sewing along this rectangle. You can use pins. I have my masking tape here right at hand, so I will use this. And then I will stitch them together by sewing the rectangle. Now take your rotary cutter and cut the center line, not all the way until the end and the beginning, because we will make 2 V-shaped cuts as close into the corners as possible without cutting into our seam. And then push the J facing through the hole and give it a press so that it will stay in place. Make sure you formed out especially the corners nicely for a nice and clean look. Maybe if you have too many bumps, your cuts may not be close enough into the corners. Now we take the 2 lining pieces and a 20 centimeter 8-inch long zipper with zipper pull attached, and both pieces are right side up, and we will stitch it on there with 7 millimeter seam allowance, 1/4 of an inch. Then fold the fabric away and attach the other edge of the zipper onto the right side of the lining piece in the same way. So again, if you fold the fabric away, the wrong side of the fabric is up and the zipper is right side up. And then you align the sides from the J panel with the sides of the lining piece. From the A piece, you will center the gap in the A piece right above the zipper, and then stitch a rectangle around it. Now you turn the piece over, fold the fabrics right sides together, and yes, trim off some extra zipper tape. Fold the fabrics right sides together and trim off the extra fabric on the bottom. So what I like to do is I like to leave 2 openings in my lining to turn the piece, and I would suggest you to do that too. We leave an opening here, a small one, and we sew the edges with 1 centimeter 3/8-inch seam allowance. You see, I left an opening here to close my other opening in the lining later on. And now the 2 pieces for our interior are done, and we can start with assembling the bag. So let's get to the tricky and a bit frustrating part. A lot of my testers had issues with this. I've had issues with this too. We all do. And it's the top zipper, which is curved and which is not as easy. So we take a zipper that is 33 centimeters long, and we sew the tabs on it in the same way as we did with the other zipper before. We use a 1 centimeter seam allowance and fold the fabrics wrong sides together, but this time do not stitch in rectangles, just top stitch the zipper, because we will trim the lining of the tab just for a reduction of the bulk in the top of the zipper in the back, because it's easier to form out the bumps and everything. And then we will mark the center again of our zipper, and we will attach it to the front main fabric piece first. So make sure it's marked on the center. We will make some small cuts into our main fabric piece where the curves are, and then we will place the zipper right sides together, closing towards the left, just the same way as our other zippers closing. And I will start here in the center, basting it on there first. So it's important, do not pull any piece. If you pull like the zipper, or if you pull on the fabric, you will get curves. It's also easier if you open up the zipper. Like here for the basting, it's not as important as when we sew with the correct seam allowance. Only focus on the piece that's right in front of the needle. They need to be aligned. What's in like far away is not as important. So as you see, I go there like step by step, adjusting the bottom fabric to be straight as the zipper, but only like the few stitches in front of my needle. And I started at the center, so when I'm done here, I will start at the center again and sew towards the other edge in exactly the same way. I sew really close to the edge. I make sure the edges are aligned, and I go slow and go stitch by stitch, adjusting my fabric so the edges match up nicely. So this was just the basting to attach the zipper on there, and next we will attach the lining piece and sew with the correct seam allowance of 1 centimeter 3/8-inch. Usually I sew my zippers with a 7 millimeter 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. This time I will make a bigger seam allowance and also make some more snips into the fabric and the zipper tape in the end. Therefore, you need to know if your zipper is okay with being clipped, because some zippers tend to fray. So since I have to do a larger seam allowance than usually, I will take my zipper foot and I will start at the center again. You see the centers of the fabrics are aligned. The fabric, the lining piece, is right side down. I will open up the zipper and then I will sew with 1 centimeter seam allowance. And I went slow for this again, and this is done in the same way as we've attached the zipper with the basting stitch. But here I forgot to make some snips in the lining, and especially in this hard top curve I have to make snips, otherwise this won't work. And see, now I see I have an issue, so I make some small snips, make sure everything's aligned, and then I will start from the center and sew towards the other edge as well. So turn the piece around. Now you see the lining piece is on the bottom now, so whatever is more easy for you to make. And then I will sew with 1 centimeter seam allowance, continuing my stitches and to lock the stitch at the beginning as well. And what I do next before I top stitch the piece is I will clip the seam allowance a little bit in some pieces where the curves are, just to avoid some more waves in my zipper. But unfortunately I did not show that here. So before you do that, make some more small snips, really small snips in the seam allowance that we've just created. Then you fold the fabrics wrong sides together and top stitch. So here I was wondering why one piece, the lining piece, is bigger than the main, but I've adjusted that in a pattern, so they should line up perfectly now. I think I've made like 8 or 9 Lunara Crossbody bags, and when making this I thought this was gonna be an easy project, but it's not. It's a challenge, guys, I'm telling you. So when you first make your Lunara, make sure that it's not your all-time favorite fabric. To be honest, make one or practice a bit curvy zippers before you do that, because it's a skill. Yeah, it's something we have to learn, right? So there the piece is top stitched. Now I will check if I do have bumps or anything already, but it looks okay. You could also give it a steam in between and see how the zipper lays. And now we will attach the back, main fabric and lining fabric to the piece in exactly the same way. We will clip the curvy parts of the main fabric piece, place the zipper on top, right sides together, start stitching from the center towards the side, and baste first, and then place the lining piece on top, right side down, so main and lining pieces are right sides together, and sew with 1 centimeter seam allowance as well, 3/8-inch seam allowance as well. When that is done, clip your seam allowance and then turn the pieces over so they are wrong sides together, and then top stitch your zipper and pray for it to work out. So the zipper is top stitched now, and I will trim off the tabs on the side. Like I said, the lining piece should line up with your pieces nicer than here on the video, because I've made so many changes. So trim this off, and then we will attach the gusset piece. The tabs should be trimmed a little bit, but the lining and the main fabrics, they should align nicely now. Okay, looks good. Check your zipper, maybe give it another press, and then mark the centers on the bottom of your pieces, and we will attach the gusset to the front main fabric first. Therefore, you will align the main fabrics right sides together on the bottom, and then attach them to the edges until you're 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches from the top edge. So therefore you need to adjust a little bit and make sure that they're both ending at the same height on the front piece. It should be 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches from the top edge. And the other thing is, when you start stitching the two pieces together, make sure you leave a gap of 1 centimeter from the top on the gusset E piece. Don't start at the beginning of the piece. See here, I needed to adjust my piece a little bit so that it's 4 centimeters on both edges. Measure again. See, there's a bit too much room right here. So adjust the pieces, and then you will sew them together with 1 centimeter 3/8 inch seam allowance. Like I said, when I do this, leave a gap of 1 centimeter, but I will show you later where to start and where to finish your stitches. It was better visible on the lining piece, so I prepared this here for you. You see, you will start where the dot is, because with the lining you will do the same thing as with the main fabric. So you start here, and this is the piece sewn together, and then you will attach it to the back in the same way. Again, make sure that it's 4 centimeters from the top and the bottom edge, so the sides, everything lines up nicely. And then sew with 1 centimeter seam allowance as well. Starting, you make like a triangle, because you start your seam like where the dot was that I showed you before. 1 centimeter seam allowance, 3/8 inch seam allowance. And to complete the side edges, we also need to sew the top, the 4 centimeters that we left like that. So you put them, you fold the top from the gusset piece to the side, fold them right sides together, the front and the back, and sew with 1 centimeter seam allowance just until you get to the point where the seam is. To avoid any like bumps or creases, make sure it's folded away and maybe like a tiny bit above the beginning of the stitches. And of course you will repeat this to the other side as well. See, I flip this over the E piece top, and I will sew until I get here. Now we will repeat this with the lining pieces, but before, what I didn't show in the video, you need to trim your seam allowance, because it's a curved seam allowance of 1 centimeter. You do need to trim it with pinking shears if you don't want like the seam being pushed like inwards a little bit. Like, I hope you know what I mean. Now repeat this. We first attach it to the back this time, and we won't leave a gap here because there's the gap of the interior zipper pocket. So we will sew the whole edge with 1 centimeter seam allowance. And like here, I'm showing you this like in detail again because it was much more easy to see on the lining. I start 1 centimeter from the edge. I make a dot there so I know where my seams will meet up. Then I will attach the gusset E piece onto the front in the same way, but this time I will leave a big opening in the bottom, like in the center of the seam. So this will be the opening where we will turn our bag through, and then later on we will close the opening through the opening in the interior zipper pocket. If you have done any of my projects, you know that's how I like to do that. So stitch it together with 1 centimeter seam allowance, 3/8 inch, but leave a big opening in the bottom in the center of the piece. Here you can see the hole. I stitched everything else together, a big hole here, and now we will close the sides as well, exactly the same. So you pull the fabric from the gusset to the side, the seam allowance, then put the front and the back right sides together and stitch it with 1 centimeter seam allowance until you get to the stitches from the gusset. We are almost done. We just need to make the straps now. So we will need 2 pieces of webbing. The first piece is 2 inches long, 5 centimeters, and you put the square ring threaded on there and baste the short ends together. Now we will stick this piece into the main fabric gap. So there's the D piece, so we put this on the other side, and you see that there's a hole from lining and a hole from the main fabric, and you choose the one from the main fabric, of course, and put it in there and let it stick out a little bit. So some of my testers didn't like the flat look as much as I do, and they would rather wear the bag with the strap being not flat, so they twisted it like this on this picture. That's totally up to you because it's your bag, your project. Insert it the way you would like your bag to be. I like the flat look, so I put it in like this, and then I will stitch this top edge with 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I also make some extra stitches for extra strength within the seam allowance. So I take the second piece of webbing. This is the place where the D corner piece is, and I will take a 55 inch long, 1 meter 40 long piece of webbing, stick it in there, and you can grab from the inside and pull it through until you only have like a little bit, like a centimeter or so, sticking out of the hole. And then make sure it's straight because it tends to go to sideways. And then stitch it with 1 centimeter seam allowance, 3/8 inch, and make some extra stitches in the seam allowance for extra strength. See right here, I made just on top of the seam, I made some extra stitches. Then you trim the corner. You can generously trim the corner of the lining because this will be in the way and not visible anyways. So I do like to trim this a lot, and then turn the bag right side out. Unfortunately, my camera died during this process and I didn't realize it. So maybe you know what's going on here. I pull the lining through the opening of the interior zipper pocket, and then I will align them to continue my stitches to close the gap in the lining, the main lining. Then I will put this piece back, and then I will pull out the lining from the interior zipper. To form out the bag, I've used some chopsticks to push out especially the top where the webbing is, you know. And yes, I formed out all the curves before I did that, but that was on the point where my camera died. Now I pull up the lining from the interior pocket, I trim the corners a little bit, and then I fold the seam allowance inward and just give it a top stitch to close the second opening. Then you can put it back, and all that is left to do is to finish your strap by using a slider. So form everything out nicely, have a look at your pretty bag, and I hope you did not get a too wavy bacon zipper. I've read this on Creative Bag Making, I think. It was funny because we were just in a tester group discussing how we could do this with the zipper. So you thread slider, make sure it's upwards, like not twisted, and then you put the slider on and thread it from the front to the back through the squaring, and then give it some room in the slider because we need to go underneath the webbing, and then we will fold over the end and just give it a final top stitch so everything stays in place. I've stitched a rectangle just to have the center webbing sewn together, and then you're good to go. You can wear your bag, you can just admire it, show it to your friends, or maybe you like to sell these type of bags. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial with me. I hope you make plenty more bags with me, and I hope you did not mind like the snotty nose I have right now and a sore throat. But you know, maybe you have your own business too. There's never enough time to rest if you have sick days, but I hope you've enjoyed this anyways. So come meet me on Patreon, meet me on YouTube, meet me on Facebook. I'm just everywhere, and we get to make so many more cool bags together. See you next time. Bye.